Cool. Welcome, folks, to the latest installment of the Coaches Connect call. I'm joined here by a lovely group of coaches, and we were previously discussing uh, the first webinar in a series of webinars that are coming at us fast and furious in the PN community. Gentle reminder, if you're watching the replay for this, those webinars may have already happened. One happened earlier last week on wearable technology and advanced screening that coaches can employ with their clients. And the next one coming up, I believe, is about weight loss medication, and that is happening on August 28th. Likely this replay will be posted after that one. But good news is there are more webinars coming down the pipeline. Keep an eye out. And then, of course, if you're looking for any replays that you don't have access to currently, please email us at info@precisionnutrition.com, and our team will be happy to get you those resources. A conversation that I wanted to start for today, unless anyone else has any questions. No, a conversation I wanted to start for today was we are changing seasons here, at least in the Northeast. Folks are going to be going back to school. Maybe you have someone in your family who is going to school for the first time. Maybe they are going to a new school. Maybe you yourself are going back to school. This often leads to a period of changing schedules, changing norms. Just curious to know, how are folks helping their clients to make those adjustments, or how are you helping your family and yourself make those adjustments? Do you got something for us, Leah?
It's like you knew. So I homeschool my kiddos. And I started us on the 12th. And so just getting back in the routine of things. I personally find it easier because when we aren't schooling, we just have way too much relaxation and we don't have any schedule. So I find it easier. I have some of my clients who I have one that's starting homeschooling this year. And I've been talking to her about prepping and doing all of that because it's for her and her son. And she's actually more excited that she gets to be at home where she has more access. So they're not as busy running around, and she's seeing the value in that, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then my other one, she has kiddos that go to public school, and she's just thrilled because now she's just like, okay, now I can do those things again. So I feel like, I don't know if all mamas feel that way, but I'm seeing that a lot of mamas feel that same way, where it's like summer, we're a little bit more relaxed and we don't really have
Mm-hmm.
that set routine. So then just being able to reintroduce that back into our lives again, even though, over the summer I was having them be mindful. But I feel like, when you have that structure, it makes life so much easier. So again, we just start small, start on meal preps, do that kind of stuff so that, because kids are starting sports here already.
Mm-hmm.
And then that takes time as well. So I'm seeing that trend of a lot of people are like more relaxed in the summertime because there isn't quite as much going on. And then also having that structure back in their lives.
Fair. Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point that as someone who is not a human caregiver and has only ever been on the student side of that equation, it is not something that naturally comes to my mind where, oh, September means I get time back.
Yeah,
Usually, if
right.
you're the student and you're going to school, generally it's, oh, I have more structure, I have more responsibility during that time, which means my free time and my ability to participate in other things tends to shrink. But if you're an adult in this world and you are a caregiver, you may be experiencing the opposite, as well as your clients who now have uh, more time, or time where their little ones or their learners have more structure. And it also
Mm-hmm.
offers an opportunity for caregivers as well to take a step back and say, hey, what can I do with this additional structure? I'm curious to know if there's any coaches here who uh, do you schedule or do you change your messaging online or with the people that you talk to try and harness this period to increase intake for your clients? Either do you have courses that you have at this time? Do you start to talk to people about, hey, coming back to programs, anything of that nature? Christine, I see you nodding your head there. What does it look like in your business?
Yeah, I actually do always am sending out whatever content I do, either through a newsletter or an email or any kind of social media. I try to make it relevant. And I think that as parents, it's my athletes are role models, not only for their children, but also for the other people around them. So I think that that's kind of the message that I'm using right now as back to school, and I have a lot of athletes who's have college age kids. So
Mhm.
that's the message that I'm really trying to communicate with my audience right now is about role modeling and how what they do is being watched by their loved ones.
Super cool. Do you create any offers specifically to cater to that community of people who are caregivers, people who are modeling those behaviors?
No, I don't ever have any changes in my pricing or packaging. I try to stay
Mhm.
consistent.
Fair enough. Uh, yeah, and I mean, personally, I don't know if I would change pricing around this time of year, but just I think the focus on messaging to be like, hey, you might have some free time coming back into your life, or this is a season where you're in flux and in change anyway. Is there a possibility to utilize this period of time to your benefit? That is super cool. Anyone else who either feels the effects of this change or changing time period uh, personally or with their own clients?
There's definitely, people need to kind of prepare differently at this point of time because the weather's changing. The cyclists need their clothing changes a little bit differently, all athletes would. And um, so that's definitely one thing. And more importantly is just kind of getting back on track after a really fun summer that we all have, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. We just like it's fun and busy. A lot of music, a lot of water time. And so just kind of getting back in the groove of settling in. And then right away, we have to start looking into how everybody's going to prepare for the holidays and
Mhm.
getting into that new year. So it's kind of late to be thinking about oh, what are you going to do this month other than just reminders to this is open, come, here's a chance for you to do this or that. There's a couple of Tough Mudders still out there as opportunities, and uh, reminding people to make their plans, and then personally on a business sense to really jump into that next mode.
That is fair. And yeah, you bring up some really good points, especially around the seasonal changes that we should expect. I had a soccer game that I have like a weekly soccer game on Monday. And by the last 15 minutes of the game, we were basically just feeling around through the dark because the sun had started to set so much earlier. It was the first like, oh yeah, there's a real change in the air moment that I had for this season, and it's only going to continue to progress. So yeah, you also bring up the idea of uh, making those adjustments. Like if you're thinking of them now, you might be a little bit late in the game, and that's potentially messaging that you might want to use with some of your clients to say, "Hey, have you already started to think about these things? Like the time period shift is not really going to wait for you to make those adjustments. But if you're feeling a little bit behind, potentially having some support that you don't regularly have or that you haven't tried before, this might help you to feel more in control of that seasonal change. So, certainly some strong messaging that you might want to use.
Your talk about the lighting is really important, to remind people to have their bike lights charged and their walking lights charged. It is so like all of a sudden it's dark now, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just looking over my bike right now. It's like, I don't think I've charged these all summer. But I also had a flat tire for like 2 months. So some bike maintenance is definitely in the works. Thank you for that reminder. Vicky, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think that now is a particularly challenging time because it's not summer and it's not fall, right? I mean, it's that
Right.
like, and I'm also in the Pacific Northwest, Sandy. um, but yeah, I mean, like we had torrential rain last Friday or Saturday, and then it's supposed to be 90 this week. So it's this roller coaster that can be hard for people to adjust. Yeah, so just talking about transitions, in general, like how because this is a transitional period from one thing to the other, but it's not one or the other. Yeah, but the light, definitely the days are getting shorter, which, yeah, it kind of zaps energy a little bit, right? When, to me, like those during the summer when the days are so long, just so much energy and get so much done. And then it starts to get winter and you get a little bit less as the sun goes down. So, yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean, in terms of messaging, I think that's all very valuable to capture in terms of there's typically a little bit more of a somber tone around the end of summer. It's this period that many of us look forward to for much of the year, but there is a lot of possibility there. So capturing that in the message as well and saying, hey, there's a lot up in the air right now. The seasons are changing. We're starting to get the first few hints of it. If this is also a season for change in your personal life and you want to harness that for some improvements that you're looking to make before the holiday season arrives, these are all really useful things to start to capture and put into words and share with the people in your communities, be it through newsletters or social media, or just conversations that you're having with folks who you maybe don't see throughout the summer, but start to see them again at kids' sports or at specific sporting events that you attend yourself, uh, things of that nature. I've moved also all three of you ladies to the upper right corner of my screen so that, or the upper left corner of my screen, so you're officially in the Pacific Northwest of this Zoom meeting. One of the things I think that uh, is maybe lost in this conversation a little bit, or at least we haven't touched on it yet, or how do our expectations change throughout this period? Either expectations that you notice from clients or expectations that you have of your clients. I mentioned previously that I've always been on the student side of things. So maybe I have a blind spot here to what we should expect from our caregivers. Uh, but I'm curious to know, especially for people here who have kids or who work with primarily caregivers, what expectations do you see a shift in from your clients or in the work that you do? Go for it, Leah.
So something that puts more expectation is, I mean, there's always an expectation for nutrition, yeah. But now there's like a little bit more pressure because from switching from summertime to school time, now the pressure is there's more time restraints. So time, like eating at a certain time, right? And in the summertime, it's like, whatever, we'll go to bed at 8, like it's fine. So now it's like there's more of that pressure. So this is when I push that meal prep time more. Starting to plan, do that. I'm trying to get back into the swing of things myself because this is week 2. And I do, well, technically week 3. But I'm also doing that for myself, but then reminding my clients as well, just like when we were talking about the bikes, right? Like, oh, bike riders, right? Like charge your stuff, like that's important. But then also the importance of meal prep because we do have this time, but now it needs to be done at a certain time. So the importance of meal prep, the importance of doing all the steps to get that meal on the table. So that's where I'm at right now, and just pushing those things and those expectations. Or, here, I mean, I'm in Hawaii, so I'm a big island. So there's people that are traveling, which is an hour and a half to the other side of the island, and they're traveling to the other side to do soccer games. So it's helping them prepare for that traveling and eating over there instead of eating out, because it's super easy to do. And here in Hawaii, everything's fried in rice. Or there's poke too, but it's also it's way better to make it yourself because it's super oily. It has tons of oil in it. So for my ones that are in, like, they're cut right now, they can't eat all that. So just helping them with those easy meals to take with them that they can. If they want poke, I'm doing poke recipes, all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's like an important shift too, is like the time management is a little bit more strength, and then there's just more of that expectation for having the nutrition and having the nutrition set.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing, Leah. I'll personally say from a few people that I'm working with. Oh, where did the hand raising button go? I think it is somewhere at the bottom. Maybe if you click on reacts, the little
It's
arrow
in
on react.
reactions.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you click there, it should be the bottom giant button there. Ange, you have your hand up. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
It used to be an actual button, all of its own, with a picture of a hand even. How?
Progress at
One
what
thing,
cost?
I know, right? So I'm in New Zealand, so I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum from you guys. We're going to be coming into spring soon, which is amazing. But I do work with a number of folks in your part of the world, and one of the things that I'm noticing a lot is, with regards to expectations, is they're all like, oh, my kids are going back to school, so the little bit of free time that I had, like before I went to work or whatever, I can do this and I can do this and I can do this and I can do this. And I'm like, have just been thinking just over the last few days that next time I'm talking to these clients, I want to raise the idea of possibly for the first week or two, maybe we use that time to just kind of hang out with ourselves a little bit and have some time to ourselves, because I'm a working mum, and what I'm noticing for myself is that I am constantly caring for people. I have children and a husband that I am caring for whenever they're around, and this job by nature is a caring job. So all of my time is spent caring about people, which is awesome. I like it. It feels really good, like inside my body and all the rest of it. But something that I always do for myself, I haven't always, but like in the last couple of years when my kids go back to school at the end of summer, is I quite often give myself the first few days not client facing, because I've been juggling and all this over the summertime and stuff like that. So I think that's something I'm going to be raising with my clients over the next like couple of weeks of sessions is there a moment where instead of going, oh, I can start getting my strength workouts in again, you can go, hey, maybe I could like go for a nice walk in the forest. Maybe I could have a nap, because the power of the nap is like well underrated for parents, working parents especially, right? Like, geez, the nap. It's like the king of all things. So yeah, that's where my thoughts are going. When you were talking about expectations, Jeremy, I'm like, let's expect that we can slow down a little bit instead of just like putting our foot back on the pedal again.
Fair enough. And yeah, I take actually a very similar approach to you as well. Before I speak on that though, that 30-minute closing my eyes after lunch is a godsend. It really makes the rest of like the 3 hours that I have of work a possibility without my brain completely shutting down. Uh, but yes, in terms of expectation setting, when I think about a lot of the work that I do with clients, especially parents to younger kids, looking at June, July, where typically childcare demand will go up for many of them uh, in normally kind of like a small spurt, unless they have like childcare programs where it's like, oh, my kids are at day camp or they're at sleepaway camp and stuff like that. Then I have a lot of free time. Uh, but even social demands and stuff like that, it normally takes us like a week or two to get into a good rhythm that they ride out for the summer. So the expectation around like, oh, the transitional period of September, late August, early September, likely has a little bit of time where it's like, let's expect that there's also going to be a transitional period here, and it may take you a minute to find your feet. And the first thing, like you mentioned, Ange, is just like the carefully crafted strategies that you had over the summer. Let's just try and live with them for the next week or two, 7 to 14 day period. I'm really curious to see what maintains, what keeps that integrity, and then what falls apart a little bit more. And once we understand where those things lie, then let's craft new strategies again. I think there's a really set expectation that it's like once we have a system in place for with our clients and like this thing is successful, then that's the way that that segment should look for all time always, which is maybe unreasonable. And also kind of diminishes our role for ongoing support as coaches. It's like I expect that as your life evolves, as seasonal changes occur, there's going to be that shift that you will continuously have to navigate. And it's going to happen probably for, let's say, 18 years or so. So being able to help clients through that period is incredibly useful. And maybe just like when we first started our work together, where we just had that period of building awareness and observing things, let's start with that. Ideally, that period is much shorter than it was the first time around, but knowing what you know now, let's see how long it takes to just kind of say, okay, here's the things that I've identified that are not as strong as I would like them to be. Even though I had strategies that worked really well in the summer, what do I need to do in order to change those? So there may be a period where it's like I actually pull back, even though I expect that you will have more time and you will have greater resources to devote to yourself. Let's take off some pressure first, start with that period of awareness and observation, and then build from there, which I think can be a really freeing period for folks who are still kind of getting used to that switch. Terms that come to mind here would be like task switching. If you have multiple visits or you do multiple tasks in a day, you're aware that it's like I normally don't go straight from cooking to laundry to helping with homework to doing my workout. There's those lulls in between. And those are kind of crucial for us to get our brain in the right order so that we can adjust to the new expectation. Like I probably wouldn't want to go from cooking and laundry straight to my workout. Like there's probably a task that happens in between, a subtask, and that could be like foam rolling or stretching a little bit just to get my mind right before my workout. The value of that thing may stand on its own, but the additional value that it has is like it helps me to transition. So we're looking at kind of a zoomed out time scale here. What it helps us with task switching when our schedules are vastly different, it could be just that period of observation. So those are the things that are kicking around in my head. As someone who is not a caregiver, my life doesn't change significantly except for playing soccer in the dark as opposed to in the boiling heat. But Sandy, I am definitely gonna, as soon as this call is done, all my lights are going on chargers and making sure that the batteries are all set. Any other additional insight or tips? I'm dogless at the moment, Vicky. I'll have someone. There'll be one on Thursday, and then I'm booked in again for a while. But no dogs today, which is also a nice little break, and gave me some time to focus on some other things. Ange, what do you got? And then I'll come to you, Sandy.
This is probably maybe a little bit left field for some people, but I am also like a personal protection coach. So I've got a background in martial arts and reality-based self-defense. And I use this time to educate and encourage women who are active outdoors into how to take care of their personal safety. So I don't know whether that's something that anybody else might like find somebody to collaborate with around that kind of thing. Because it's like, it's a time where more stuff kind of comes up in the news about women that are out running alone at night and all that those kind of bits and pieces. So it's a little bit kind of left field from what we're talking about, but it's another consideration that I usually have coming into kind of the autumn time and and like daylight savings changing and all of those kind of bits and pieces to be aware of for my clients, mostly women.
That is interesting. It's not something I've considered. You're in the southern hemisphere. Are your days getting a little bit longer and therefore people are more encouraged to get out and be outside and more active later in the day?
Yeah, so I work with a lot of runners because, well, I'm a runner and I'm involved in like a run club and stuff like that. So a lot of my people have still been out doing all of that over the winter. And thankfully most of them find friends to go with and the rest of it. But some people that are just trying to fit things in wherever they can, struggle with strategies around their own kind of safety. And like, yeah, people are getting outside a little bit more now, but yeah, a lot of runners that I know, they really enjoy running in the winter because it's not stinking cold. So, they really enjoy that
Fair.
kind of colder, yeah, they really enjoy that kind of colder thing. So it was all about, I can personally like run these classes and do these courses myself, but I wonder if it might be quite interesting for people in our like nutrition and health coaching space to reach out and try and find people who are experienced in that kind of thing and have some kind of offer or collaboration in place to help women with that kind of stuff.
Well, you know what, actually, so when we're looking for guests for Coaches Connect calls, Kate often goes quite left field with who we
Yeah,
bring on, like
she's left field
AI
anyway.
specialists. She lives in the left field by and
Yeah, it's her
large.
house.
Uh, but yeah, that might be something that you want to message her to share and say, hey, like if this is a consideration for more coaches that maybe they haven't given a lot of thought to, that might be something where you can shine a light there a little bit more. Uh, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I would ask, like, oh, is there anything that low-hanging fruit that occurs to you that may not occur to the average untrained individual?
Oh, you're asking me that now. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
similar to charging my bike lights. I'm trying to get
yeah.
all the safety advice I can today.
Generally, so if I run an in-person course, we talk about pre-contact indicators and being able to notice like out the gate behavior from people. Just
Mhm.
it's an awareness thing, which is the same. It ties in with all of our coaching, isn't it? It's awareness, looking around and noticing. One of the biggest things that I tell women to look for with people that could potentially do them harm is looking for people that have no reason to be somewhere. So like if you're
Mhm.
in a car park and there's somebody standing around and they're not by a car, you're like, that's like,
Mhm.
light bulb number one. That kind of thing. Sudden changes of direction from people. They're walking in one direction and then they see you and then they change direction. People that have their hands where you can't see them. There's an entire list that I usually run through that I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. But in an in-person course, we would dive all the way through to right at the end. We would do a little bit of like last resort physical contact work. But yeah,
Mhm.
mostly most of my coaching with this stuff is around being really, really super aware of your surroundings, thinking about your environment in the way of like a traffic light system where, green is when you're at home and all your doors are locked and you're on your couch and nobody's going to jump out from behind your couch with an axe while you're watching the TV. To having people think about, well, in your life where you go, what would you consider like an orange light, like where you're somewhere where you're like,
Mhm.
oh, the kind of places that make you feel maybe slightly uneasy, but or not even slightly uneasy, but anything could happen because you're out in the world, right? And your awareness needs to be a little bit higher to like that final level of red light situation where you're like, this place makes me feel super creepy and I need to get it back to orange and then back to green like ASAP. So that's generally how
Right.
we roll with that.
That sounds super interesting. I would encourage you to send Kate a DM and see what she has to say.
I
I
will
know
do
she's
that.
always on the hunt for new hosts or new co-hosts, so feel
I'll
free
email
to
her
reach out
because
to her.
her DMing is
Spotty at
semi-subpar.
best. Cool. Thank you, Ange. Sandy, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, Angela, on your stuff, boy, I would go to your workshop. You bring up so many quick things and I'd love to know what the rest of that list is. So if you put that together, I'm there. We don't have to worry about it quite so much where I am because it's we're on an island, and we pretty much know everybody. It's just gotten to by boat, so it's not like there are crazies, lot of things people here, but to worry about, but um, not like normal places. But what I was going to say that I thought of in this conversation is that depression is also something that comes in with the fall when people start having a hard time managing their joy in dark, dreary days with less ease of doing outside things and things that are so refreshing. So
Do you find that that features in conversations that you have with your clients?
absolutely, yes. Yeah, probably 60% of them.
What tools or what direction do you find yourself guiding those conversations?
Um, that they have a plan of um of getting outside, of doing things, of what they're going to be eating, of noticing what they might have been imbibing in that could kind of bring them down. It's too much to work through for the body, right?
Mhm.
So if you have too many sugars, it's just it fills up the whole head space and you can't cope as well. So that along with making sure to get walking or get the treadmill out or stationary bike or outside
Fantastic. So it sounds like
things.
a lot of it is kind of building awareness around what are the changes we're expecting, and then what are the managing and coping strategies that you're currently using, and how do you use those to best effect.
Yeah, and how do you change those in the off season, right? And it's similar to looking for that threat over your shoulder, right? It's similar sort of things. It's that orange mode, orange place, and getting back to that green spot, um, so that you can really manage things without doing a deep dive.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
those are valuable conversations. Likely ones that will pop up a little bit more over the next few weeks. But luckily, we still have quite a bit of summer left, at least in the Northeast. The Pacific Northwest sounds like a dreary, solemn place at this time of year. Uh, but
Not yet, not
hopefully,
yet.
not
Close.
not quite yet.
A
Not
couple of
quite yet.
days of
Cool.
it, yeah, a couple days of it here and there, but we've still got another month of mostly fun, don't you think, Vicky?
Sorry, what? What was the question?
That we have another month of good weather on and off.
Well, yeah, I think so because it's drizzly today, which is just weird. But yeah, in a couple days it's gonna be 90. So usually you can get through to October, beginning of October. I've heard though that September is supposed to be a wet month. We're in cyclocross season, just starting.
Mhm.
Don't know if you've delved into that yet, but mud is actually a good thing. People embrace it. So it's kind of like, yay, the rain's coming, it's muddy, we get to go play like kids. So
My understanding of it is that mud is inescapable in that sport. So if you cannot embrace it, it will chew you up and spit you out.
yeah, and yet last year was so dry. Like all of the races through like November were dry. It was crazy. But yeah, it's supposed to be a little wetter this year. It's all good. I like the changes.
Sounds like a mindset that is geared towards managing expectations. Well done. I was, I was reading your comment here, Katie. Chicago landed on the sun today. I'm going to assume that that means it's very hot and not that Chicago has started its own space program. Uh, and if so, it is the other. Oh, 110. Ooh, that seems aggressive. So yeah, definitely managing that shifting season. We're very much, as Vicky put it before, in that kind of intermittent cooler mornings, blisteringly hot afternoons, and then cooler evenings again, which means that you just get to sweat through many more layers of clothing. So also managing maybe the laundry bill is something that people need to have more conversations on. Cheers, Sandy. Thank you for joining. Cool. Were there any other conversations that folks wanted to bring about today as well? Katie, are you able to unmute?
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
curious to know.
Yeah, sorry. I was
Yeah, no
making
worries.
sure nobody was in the way.
All good, all good. Are these conversations that your clients are asking more about?
Oh yeah, because obviously, like working like people that like to work out outside right now, it's like we're under
Mhm.
excessive heat warnings, and it's like don't go outside at all. So like, what can you do in the house? And if you do want to go work out outside, what can you do? Like during the morning, it was still 83 and so humid this morning. So just talking about hydration, talking about just kind of paring down the workout. So maybe just go for a walk today. Maybe, I understand like there's the whole like mental component. A lot of people need to get their workout in to feel good and start
Mhm.
their day. So just like how can we do it safer if we can't get into an air conditioned place?
Fair enough. Are there any resources that you share with your clients regarding hydration?
I mean, just big on water, just kind of always sipping. I love the water bottles that remind you to drink. And so, because
Mhm.
I hate water myself. So I'm like the one that's constantly like, all right, pushing water every hour. I check to see where I'm at. So just, pushing the normal water as much as I can.
Fair enough. Yeah, if they're working out outside as well, you may want to encourage them to put a dash of salt into their water as well to help with replenishing some of the sodium lost through excessive sweating. We know that when it's hotter outside and when it's more humid outside, sweat rate tends to increase. And when we lose sweat, we're also losing some vital nutrients as well. Uh, oh, Vicky, yeah, sorry, I did not see your message from earlier. Uh, let's finish with this topic for today. Let us know what the conversation sounds like with your client currently.
Um, yeah, so again, we've all had those clients like, oh, I listened to a podcast and XYZ. And so the client is concerned that she's under eating because she listened to a podcast on LEA, low energy availability. And
Hmm.
again, I'm talking to coaches here. I'm not talking to my client, but I do not believe that is the case. I don't think she's under eating. I think she's probably yo-yo dieted for the last 20 years. And I do
Hmm.
think yo-yo dieting does have effect on your resting metabolic rate for sure. But this podcast was written towards athletes, and she is working out quite a bit. I'm also her cycling coach, and
Hmm.
but she's working out 4 to 6 hours a week, not 10 to 15. We're focusing on daily, whole foods, non-processed, um, you know, good fundamentals. And I always encourage her to feed her training. But so she's concerned that she's not eating enough daily because she's tracked for 30 years and she thinks she's eating, 16 to 1800 calories a day. And she's currently, probably 50, 60 pounds overweight, but she's been higher even.
Hmm.
So just how to have that conversation about like, are you really tracking? And, and the consistency thing, like you can track for 5 days and then totally compensate and then some on the weekends, right? I mean, we've all done that.
Right.
So just having that conversation. And Christine was kind enough to share that article with PN, which is great. I was scrolling through it when I got busted when you asked me a question. um, but I was wondering if anyone's ever increased their calories just to do the test. Like, okay, you think you're under eating, let's test it. Let's see what happens when we increase your intake. And then or B, sharing this article with them rather than me saying like, yeah, I think you're not under eating, just curious if anyone else has experience with that, and what your recommendations would be.
I'll open this one up to the floor. It sounds like Christine has very kindly shared that resource that we often point to when these discussions pop up in our community, but I'm curious how other coaches are handling this conversation. What do you got, Leah?
So I always ask the question of why, right? Like anything, it's like why? Like why does she feel that way? So do you know why? I mean, besides listening to the podcast, has she shared to you why she thinks that she's under eating?
Yeah, because again, she's tracked, MyFitnessPal, et cetera, for 20 years. And so she thinks
Mm-hmm.
she's been maintaining this, what she thinks is a caloric deficit all these years and gained weight, not lost weight. And she does have thyroid. She has Hashimoto's, which is an added complications. And so she thinks too that under eating is going to make her Hashimoto's worse. But the why is because I've been tracking all this time, not losing weight. Perhaps it's
And
because
not
I've
losing
been
weight.
under eating weight for the last 30 years. Yeah. So.
Interesting. Because like that's always like the first thing. Like I always ask like, why do you feel this way?
Right.
And then the other thing too is like you said, like the consistency. And my whole thing with all my clients is like my clients aren't liars. Like we're not lying. Like, and then I tell them too, like if you aren't being consistent and true, you're just lying to yourself. Like I don't care if you're lying to yourself, right? So that's something that I will say because because that really is what it is. Like, why is it important for you to lie to me and not be consistent when you're really, you're doing that to yourself? And then that goes into a whole nother conversation. But definitely the why. So she thinks that. The other thing.
But it's interesting because she has done 2 30-day experiments in the last 9 months and lost weight during them, right? When she gave up sugar, when she gave up processed, when she gave up alcohol. Look, I lost 15 pounds. And then I came back off it. And then, it slowly keeps back up again.
Yeah. So back to that yo-yo, like you were talking about. Yeah. But maybe like, of course, like with PN too, it's like we strive for those whole foods. And like, I don't know. Well, you said she's on MyFitnessPal. So are you looking at her logs?
We've gone through periods where we do 3-day test. I mean, sorry, why are you asking?
So I like to look like when I have, because not all my clients log on MyFitnessPal, but the ones that I do, those are the ones that I'll look at and I'll just see like where they hit. And then also that's a way that I get to see what they're doing, right? And their patterns. So if they're eating a lot of processed foods, we can have the conversation about like, hey, would this be important to you, right? Because if you make those changes, like you said, like she lost 15 pounds because she went on that 30-day like challenge, I would call it, of like, okay, well, maybe these are some of the things that we did. Like maybe her sugar intake's really high. Maybe she has a lot of processed foods in her daily intake. And then using that as that discussion of, would this be important to you to be able to take some of these and move them to more whole foods? And then if she wants, go ahead.
She's starting at another 30-day yesterday. She's testing because this thyroid issue, right? And I mean, she's very complicated. She's working with a chiropractor trying to balance her hormones, which would be a whole nother podcast we could start. But she's starting a 30-day gluten and dairy free. Great, let's try that. Let's see, let's see what the triggers are instead of eliminating everything. But so the first thing she says is that we start talking about what that means and what she's got to do and processes and eating out and that kind of thing. And she said, well, most French fries, most French fries are okay if they're not fried in. Yeah, so that's a bad sign right there. I gave her a
Yeah.
shit on that one. I'm like, well, yeah, we're having. If weight loss is the goal, then the gluten and dairy might help us with gut issues. But it's definitely not 100% going to help lose weight. So I just want to make sure we understood why we're doing this, to look for food and sensitivities, and yeah. No, thanks for the
Interesting.
support.
And then if you were going to add calories, I mean, I've maybe treat it like a reversal where you're adding like 150 to 300 calories, where that would look like adding a little bit of fat and carbohydrates. I mean, that's the only time I've ever added calories is in a reverse situation, never where somebody thinks that they're under eating and that they need more food. So that's the interesting part. And I guess my next question would be like, does she feel fueled?
Yeah, I mean, her, definitely for her training, and she's really enjoyed it. She feels good. She has energy, all that. We're doing weight training twice a
Yeah, because
week.
you
We're
said you're
doing
doing cycling.
intensity. Yep, and yep. Yeah, she feels mostly good, except for gut issues. And
Gut
so
issues,
maybe gluten and dairy is going to be the magic bullet. But when she was on the cleanse before that took out gluten and dairy and so many other things, meat, she couldn't have meat. She didn't feel good. I mean, she still didn't feel good. So anyway, I hope it's the magic bullet, but we'll find out.
Yeah.
In 30.
Well, I think too, just like making sure she's fueled, asking her those questions, because if you're under eating, you're not going to feel fueled. You're not going to feel like you are doing great in your cycling. You're not going to feel like you're doing great in your weights. You're going to feel terrible.
Yeah.
I would say that you probably feel terrible on several aspects of life. And this is one of the common
but
things that I
especially
point
those.
to. Yeah, I mean, those would definitely be canary in the coal mine moments where it's like, I'm sucking on my rides. I can't, I'm sucking at like my weight. Sleep will likely be impacted, sleep quality, their mood, irritability. What are these things like? They're aside from they're really hyperfixated right now. It sounds like, at least from what you shared, on what's happening with the scale. But if they were truly under eating to a significant degree, it's like the scale would actually be the thing that moves, but it would be everything else that kind of suffers. That's where we would expect to see like cycling performance and physical performance dropping off, libido dropping off, uh, mood and irritability also taking a hit. If none of those things are also painting this similar picture, it doesn't seem to correlate with not having enough energy, at least from like a dietary perspective.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, Jeremy. And we've had many conversations about whole health and, sleep, stress, movement, because she has a sedentary job. We're doing this exercise, but she doesn't move during the day, so just many conversations. So, yeah, that's great. That was super helpful. Thank you.
Katie, I'm going to give you the last point before we sign off for today.
I was just going to say, kind of going off of like her tracking, I've noticed, especially when I used to work in a hospital setting where we did chronic weight loss, like we had to lose like 200 to 300 pounds in order for these people to get surgery. I noticed the biggest misconception was that people think they can eyeball things. And then when people actually started measuring, so like maybe she has been on my Fitness Pal for years and tracking, and it's saying that, but like a cup is way smaller than what we want a cup to be. And, so like I noticed I had a person that literally was cooking with so much olive oil. They were putting 500 calories into their diet just from olive oil. So it was like, it might not be intentionally lying, but they're just like, oh yeah, it was about a tablespoon when you're looking at dressings and sauces, but we definitely overuse those things. So she may have just been tracking. It just may not have been accurate measurements. Yeah. And so she just, 1,600 calories. I should be losing weight, but you're really taking in more than that.
Yeah, those are just those are hard conversations to articulate. I mean, because you want to be truthful, but not so blunt that you piss them off. I mean,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, I
they're
just
hard.
always, I taught a personal class where we were all in like the same room together, but like I would measure things out for them. I would show them like we'd do a recipe of the week, and then I would just educate them to be like, okay, you made sure you used this right for this. Oh yeah, oh I didn't. I eyeballed that. Okay, well let's go back and redo. So just like there, just hey, today we're going to talk about measurements. I noticed, that I was over serving myself the other day and I, really kind of looked at this and, just kind of pull it in as more of like a teachable moment than a you did this wrong kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good point. Thanks
Hope,
everyone. This was really helpful. Just even talking
hopefully,
about
yeah.
it is really helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're not crazy. Calories still matter. Being able to get someone to understand that this is a rough estimation and that everyone sucks at calorie tracking, even people whose job depends on it, there's only a certain level of precision that you're ever going to get. If the scale is currently not moving and these other indicators are not also holistically suggesting that your weight or that your calories are not too low, then we need to just set a more appropriate target that is slightly lower until we start to see things moving in the right direction. Getting a focus or changing the focus from strict terminology around like calories and changing to something like energy density, food intake, something that lets them know that it's like I don't have to have to the gram or to the calorie measurement. Uh, uh, Sorry, what's the word I'm looking for here? Specificity or precision, good
yeah,
word. Uh, that tends to help people to release some of that tension and say like, oh, the calories don't work for me, or I don't believe this to be a thing because it is currently not working for me. And it's not that it's not working for you, it's just that you expect to see a certain outcome based on faulty numbers. And if we just reduce our attention to those numbers a little bit and understand that we are aiming for lower intake or lower energy or lower whatever you want to change that word to, that tends to help people get over the hump a little bit. And it doesn't feel like a personal attack on them or their beliefs. It is just a thing that we know is happening or not happening based on how things are progressing. Hopefully that's helpful. Awesome, gang. Thank you for your contributions today. Uh, Webinars, they're coming at us fast and furious. Make sure to check the PN Coaches page as well as your PN dashboard to see what's coming up next. And I hope to see you again next week. Cheers.